I'm not in the camp of super alarmists about climate change. I don't think we're screwed by the current cost per million of CO2, the ocean atmosphere. I think it's actually not a terrible level. However, I didn't put all that effort into creating Space and Tesla because I thought they were easy ways really. I mean, anyone who starts a car company thinking it's an easy way to make money. It's a point there are only two car companies that haven't gone bankrupt. U.S. history, and those they are Ford and Tesla, and Tesla is about to cash in several times just like Space, and it's also like someone who starts a rocket company and thinks it's going to be successful. It thought that both companies had less than a 10% chance of being successful. And it thought that I was overwhelmingly likely to lose the money that I came to North America alone when I was 17 and had a few $1,000s in traveler's checks. That traveler's checks meant something in Canadian dollars. I landed in Montreal. I have some relatives in Standen, and he's my mother's uncle, and he lived in Montreal, but we didn't know his phone number, so I landed in Montreal. Andy mother told me that she had just received a letter from my uncles saying that he had moved to Minnesota. So I was like, no, I know what to do now. I stayed in a shelter, and I bought a bus ticket to cross here, and I worked various temporary jobs to make some money. I worked on my mother's cousin's wheat farm in Saskatchewan for 6 weeks. And there it was where I turned 18. In fact, I worked in a sawmill closing logs with a chainsaw and doing various odd jobs. And then I went to the University of Canada, used for a couple of years. I paid myself only at the university, by the way, but in Canada it is easier because the university is more subsidized, and I was a Canadian citizen because of my mother, and I got some scholarships and the rest of the rest. And then I applied to the University of Pennsylvania, and I didn't think I could go because the tuition is very high, but they gave me scholarship and loans, so I graduated with a student debt of about $100,000. I was going to do graduate studies at Stanford, but I decided to leave it on standby to try to create an internet company. In fact, I tried to get I work in skateboarding, but I sent my resume, and I didn't get a response. At that time, I saw that there were only a few internet companies, and I couldn't get a job in any. So I thought, if I want to do something related to the internet, I have to create my own company. But I ended up writing the first maps and directions. On the internet, I wrote it myself in maps directions in yellow pages, white pages on every basic computers. So the code had to be super. I even have some patents on maps and directions in yellow and white pages and other things. Many years ago now they are expired, but that company ended up being bought by Compaq for about $300 million. I own 7% of the company, so I got like $20 million. That's why I put most of it, exactly, that it merged with Finite to create PayPal. And then I got about $180 million from that. And I poodle off that into SpaceX land. It just works. Basically, I kept all the chips on the table, and I thought, come on, let's play another one. And most people take their chips off the table at that time, or at least some of their chips. And that's why I think Space and Tesla ended up being valuable. And that's where I am right now. But the reason SPIES exists is how I would evaluate it is the historical asset. And it is, I would say, it is the degree to which you do is accelerated by sustainable energy. And I have actually been interested in electric cars for a long time since high school or early college. My original interest in electric vehicles was not due so much to environmental concerns, but rather to the concern that at some point we would run out of oil as it would become extremely scarce and expensive, and then civilization would collapse, that we would not be able to drive cars or run power plants. And therefore, I thought we would need some form of generation and consumption of sustainable energy, or civilization would collapse like this. That was my original interest in electric vehicles and solar energy. And then I've thought there is a certain risk that it can negatively affect the climate, since increasing the concentration of CO2 in the oceans and the atmosphere increases the risk of something going wrong. I'm not in the super alarmist camp about climate change. I don't think we're screwed by the current cost per million of CO2 in the ocean atmosphere. I think it's actually not a terrible level. However, where there is so much inertia in the direction of the mining and burning hydrocarbons, that the world is still overwhelmingly dependent on the mining and burning of hydrocarbons. So if this continues, and you start to really increase CO2 in the oceans and the atmosphere, then there is that increasing risk of accelerating climate change by basically warming the oceans and raising the sea level. Therefore, I think it is not a prudent risk, since in any case, we will have to make the transition to sustainable energy in the long term, because in the end we will run out of oil and carbon. Why do an experiment to see if something happens bad with a high concentration of CO2 in the ocean atmosphere is a meaningless experiment. We know that we have to get to some sustainable energy economy. It is totally logical. Therefore, I think we should try to get there sooner, so as not to run the risk of climate change. It would not be so catastrophic as to end our civilization, but it would be very good. Humans love to live right next door, so we are almost like a thermos. We live right on the beach, so even small changes in sea level will cause many to submerge. Houses under small changes don't have to be big. We have created a civilization that is very sensitive to temperature changes. However, many politicians who are alarmist about these things buy houses right next to the water sources. I mean, I don't like to slander the oil and gas industry, because I think the reality it's that if we didn't have oil and gas right now, civilization would collapse and everyone would die. Obviously, we need oil and gas. It would be absurd to leave it is not feasible. But I think we should try to accelerate progress towards a sustainable energy future, not slow it down. I think the most sensible it is trying to move faster towards a sustainable energy economy instead of doing it more slowly, because this reduces the risk of the climate experiment. And as I have already said that we have to reach a sustainable energy economy anyway, because doing that experiment is not smart. Anyway, so the fundamental good of Tesla, I believe, should be measured by how many years Tesla has accelerated the transition to a sustainable energy economy. 10 years, 20 years, that is the fundamental good of the company.